Well, hi, we are live this morning talking about Lyme disease once again, and we're going to be announcing the winner of our live giveaway. And I was cleaning up just before we went on air, and I put the paper down, so hopefully I, I can find it so that we know who the winner is. But today we're continuing our discussions about Lyme disease and the intersection of Lyme disease and functional medicine. So, by the way, I'm Tom Sult, a medical doctor and functional medicine practitioner.
I'm Elizabeth, a registered nurse and whole life coach.
Yeah, and we treat a variety of illnesses, mostly chronic complex disease, of which when I lecture to other doctors at the Institute for Functional Medicine on the topic of Lyme disease, I tell them that Lyme disease is truly a master's class in functional medicine because Lyme disease stresses every domain of wellness. And so, that's why I've been saying recently things like if you're on a protocol for Lyme disease, you're not going to get better, and here's why. And the reason why is because you need a completely unique program that fits how Lyme disease is affecting you. And we assess that using what we call the tools of functional medicine. So functional medicine is using the concepts of systems biology rather than organ system biology. We're thinking about, as an example, take an example like inflammation. Inflammation isn't one of the organ systems. Inflammation is a process. But in one person, inflammation can manifest as heart disease, in another person as rheumatoid arthritis, as another person as inflammatory bowel disease, and so on and so forth. And we look at those more fundamental issues, whether it's oxidative stress or methylation or inflammation, or we could go on for a long time with that list. But we look at these things and we look at them in terms of domains of how well do you digest and absorb? How well do you make energy out of your food? How well is your immune system functioning? How well is your communication system functioning, meaning your molecules of emotion, your hormones, your neurotransmitters, blah, blah, blah. So it's a completely different way of looking at the disease. And it boils down to this. The interesting question is not what is your diagnosis. The interesting question is why are you the one who has that diagnosis? What's unique and interesting about you that makes you susceptible? And so, Lyme disease. Most people who are exposed to the Lyme bug don't get Lyme disease. And those who do get Lyme disease fight it off with no help at all. So what's unique and different about you? That's the fundamental issue with Lyme disease and what makes it unique. Most people don't get it. Those who do fight it off. And then a few of us get it and maybe go to the doctor because you feel crummy, get treated with antibiotics or something for no evidence-based reason.
Feel crummier.
Maybe feel crummier. Maybe it cures you.
Yeah.
Maybe you stay sick a little longer. You get a test. It's positive. You get treated and you're over it. Mm-hmm. The real tragedy is when you go in early, you have a big erythema migraine rash, which is the Lyme rash. Was that? The bullseye rash. Yep, thank you.
Typically known as.
Yep. And unfortunately, your doctor says, yeah, well, maybe it's Lyme. Let's send off a test. Well, the Lyme rash comes up, in 3 or 4 days to 2 or 3 weeks. The test becomes positive at 3 or 4 weeks to 6 weeks. So you come in, you have what even the Center for Disease Control and the Infectious Disease Society of America would say is a diagnostic criteria, the rash and the symptoms. That's all you need. You don't need a test. You have it. But then the doctor says, well, let's just check a lab. They check the lab. The lab they drew it too early. It comes back negative. So now your doctor says, well, you don't have Lyme. We can cross that off the list. Let's look for other stuff. And you go on this long odyssey. You see 100 doctors. You get 1,000 diagnoses. You get 1,000,000 meds. Nothing works. And nobody ever looks back and says, well, maybe it's Lyme because you had a negative test. Well, the test was drawn at the wrong time. So that's really, your doctor has to understand the pathophysiology of the disease, and well-meaning doctors don't. It's just unfortunately true, and it's extremely common. And then you go on this, there was another spirochete disease that was ravaging the human race 100 years ago or so, called syphilis, right? I like to say the difference between syphilis, I shouldn't say it, I'm going to say it. The difference between syphilis and Lyme disease is it's way more fun to get syphilis, right? But they're very similar diseases. They're both spirochete diseases. They have similar pathophysiology. They both can lay dormant for a long time in your body. They both can evade your immune system and evade antibiotic therapy and so on. And we learned a lot about this from syphilis, but those lessons are not being applied to Lyme disease, and so there's this idea that it's a self-limited disease, or it's a disease that's easily treated with antibiotics, and it just turns out in a small but significant subset of individuals. When I say small, I mean small compared to the totality of people exposed to Lyme. It's still a significant subset of people who have a very, very, very difficult time with Lyme. And people have focused on treating which antibiotic is going to be the best. Well, it's more complicated than that, unfortunately. It turns out that the bug has a variety of what we call stealth pathology mechanisms. And it can evade antibiotics, it can evade your immune system, it can go metabolically dormant, and basically all antibiotics require some metabolic activity for them to kill the bug. So there are many ways that it can evade, and we know a lot about those mechanisms. In fact, that's a major part of my lecture when I talk to doctors about Lyme disease, are these mechanisms that the bug avoids our treatments, but there are ways that we can defeat their mechanisms, and so we employ those mechanisms when we treat. So one piece of the therapy for Lyme is the bug and the bug's physiology and all that stuff. That's an important piece, and we do that. But then there's another equally, if not more important piece, and that's how do we shore up your physiology so that you can fight more effectively? And that's the beauty and the power of functional medicine, no matter what chronic disease you have. How do we shore it up? So, health coach, what kinds of things do you frequently see and recommend for our patients, Lyme disease or not, that are shoring up their physiology?
It really comes down to the 5 modifiable lifestyle factors. So really, I think, especially right now, the first and foremost one is, what are you doing for stress management to kind of help you relax and come down from probably some navigation that you're having to do through all this. And then also, what type of social interaction are you able to have with others? Whether, are you taking time to really interact with your family or those around you, or at least the, small groups that we can. Because those are two that are, I just start with those because those are two that are widely overlooked and so incredibly important, because you can be getting you can be having 20 servings of fruits and vegetables a day and, really eating the cleanest diet possible and still feel crummy if you're not looking at those other areas.
So this sounds fluffy, right? It sounds like, no, these people are telling me that I need to have friendships or and fun. Well, but let me go through the real hardcore physiology and science just quickly. You're stressed out. You eat a meal stressed out. Well, when you're stressed out, you're in fight or flight. When you're in fight or flight, you're shunting blood away from your gut to your muscles so that you can fight or run. Same activity, fighting or running. It looks the same, right? So you're shunting blood away from your gut. That means you're not digesting well. It means you're not absorbing well. That means you're functionally malnourished. The other thing, 70% of your immune system is what we call the GALT, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. It's lining your gut. You're shunting blood away from 70% of your immune system. So you're functionally underperforming from an immune system point of view.
And can I add something?
Yeah, please.
So as everything he talked about, think about it. So you're eating all these great foods and you're experiencing these unpleasant symptoms. Why am I still having abdominal pain after I eat? Why do I bloat? Like, I look at my diet, I can't take anything else out of my diet. Well, because it's not the foods you're eating, it's the state your body is in when you're eating them.
Right, absolutely. And so then there's this microbiome, this teeming ecology of bacteria in our gut. And we now know that that's critical for immune system function, for hormone function, for detoxification. It even influences your food choices and your mood. And so we're not absorbing well, so we're leaving food behind. Well, somebody's going to eat that food. It turns out it's going to be the bugs in your gut. So you're altering your microbiome because you're stressed out. To me, that is one of the largest reasons why people stay sick. It's not the reason, well, it's part of the reason you got sick, but the bug is the reason you're sick, right? But all of these modifiable lifestyle pieces are what are keeping you sick. And, it's not a matter of, oh, well, I eat really well. Well, as was just described, right? Well, yeah, you're eating perfect, and yet you still have these terrible symptoms. There's the mental, emotional, spiritual aspects of wellness. There's sleep. And the insidious thing about sleep is that people who are chronically sleep deprived believe that they're doing just fine. But if you do objective tests, we know that somebody who is chronically sleep deprived, somebody who sleeps on average 6 hours a night, chronically, does worse on performance tests than somebody who sleeps normally, except for last night they didn't sleep at all. So they have a normal sleep. They sleep 8 hours a night normally, but last night they stayed up all night, and then they do performance tests. They perform better than people who are chronically sleep deprived at just 6 hours every single night. And yet the person who is 6 hours a night says, oh, I do great. I function fine.
Because you've adapted.
Because you think you've adapted, but you haven't.
You don't realize once you're in that set of motion, you don't realize how tired you actually are.
Right. So, there are so many things. And then there are biochemical tests that we look at for you personally. So we have these 5 modifiable lifestyle factors. And then my favorite salvo of tests is an organic acid profile plus a whole blood micronutrient. I like those because one's a urine collection and the other is a finger prick at home. You don't have to go to a lab in this COVID era. It's not that pleasant to go to a lab and sit next to somebody who's coughing.
You get to do it at home.
You get to do it at home. And that tells us, are you nutrient deficient? And most people aren't, so that's good news, but some people have specific nutrients or amino acids or fatty acids that are out of whack. But then the organic acid profile tells us more about the efficiency. You may have abundant, say, B12 in your blood, but are you using it efficiently? And so a test like a methylmalonic acid or a homocysteine, if abnormal, will tell us, no, you're not using it efficiently. And so by knowing which nutrients you're using efficiently or inefficiently, we can shore up your diet, we can shore up your supplements to make that work better. As going back to the example of, well, let's say your homocysteine is elevated. That suggests that you're not using folic acid well. Well, there's something called 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate we can use instead, which jumps over that step. That's the actual stuff that your body needs and uses. So it's more expensive, but in your case, you might need it. So those are the kinds of tests we do for your system. So we work hard to defeat the bugs by understanding their stealth pathology principles, and then we go into shoring up your physiology so that you can fight and become resilient and heal. So that's really the arc of it, and then the devil's in the details, as they say, and trying to fit all of that to you personally. So that's why I say if you're on a protocol, you're not going to get better. You got to be on an individualized program, because you might need 5-methyl hydrofolate, and maybe it really helped you. And so you tell your Uncle Fred, hey, this stuff is miracle. It really helped me. Well, he doesn't need it. It's just making expensive urine for him. So we look at your genetics, we look at your epigenetics, we look at your what we call metabolomics, proteomics, those kinds of things to really understand not just your genes, because your genes are not your destiny. Your genes are malleable. We can turn on and turn off genes, and we can make your genes function better by giving them the higher amounts of nutrients or more specific nutrients. So your genes are not your destiny, but they are an interesting signpost. We can look at your genes and make some guesses, and we can say, well, in this area, more than likely, we don't need to worry about that. But over here, there's some issues that we need to investigate more thoroughly. So it doesn't mean, oh, I have this gene. Oh my God, I'm a mutant. I'm going to die by Thursday. No. The genetic code is very, very redundant. We wouldn't have survived these millennia without this redundant code. So instead, it's, oh, well, this is something we should investigate more thoroughly. And maybe when we investigate it more thoroughly, it's not a problem. But maybe it's the key problem. So in your journey, what do you think was more important, the antibiotics or the antimicrobial therapy, or the functional medicine shoring up your physiology to fight?
In my journey with Lyme disease, for me, it was all of the other things.
All of the non-killing the bug things.
Yep, and really the things that I became aware of that probably set me up to even be affected by Lyme disease. So really working on specifically my autonomic nervous system. I was constantly in fight or flight, and really just helping myself to go into that parasympathetic state more frequently and know how to train myself to do that with, starting with the different supplements and the M-Wave device. So what I'm kind of talking about is the Rebalance to Heal program is largely kind of the concept of that program, because that program wasn't around when I was self-navigating through it. But really the concept behind it is, I think, was detrimental to me, not only healing, because the antimicrobials were great and they did help me get a hold on it, but I noticed myself kind of sneaking back into those same patterns, and it's because I hadn't dealt with my autonomic nervous system. So it was continually pushing me into those patterns that really, set me up for succumbing to Lyme disease.
So your story, I think, is really similar to many people's story, and that is the antimicrobials took me so far. And then I got into this sort of loop where I'd have these recurrences and I'd have these problems. And it wasn't until you incorporated many of the lifestyle changes, and frankly your lifestyle was great, so it was more the lifestyle piece.
Diet was great.
Diet was great, all that stuff. And you were even meditating and things like that, but you found a different tool, which was the meditation was great, but you needed to really focus on that autonomic nervous system part, which meditation does help with, but there's other tools that help with it probably more efficiently.
And I found out I probably wasn't meditating as effectively as I thought I was.
Right.
Honestly.
Right.
A lot of days when I thought I was relaxing and, really trying to rebalance myself. Now that I have that device, I find, it's a little bit more of a fine tuning than I realized.
Yeah. So it's easy. We're very good at fooling ourselves, whether it's being chronically underslept. Right? Well, we talked about that a minute ago. But I'm a pilot, and I was just on a forum yesterday talking about pilot stuff, and people were saying, well, I don't do that. Well, actually, yeah, you do. we're all human, and all doctors think that they're not biased by drug reps. They make the right scientific decision. Well, but you know what? The data shows clearly that doctors are influenced by drug reps, and that's why drug companies hire these people to go into doctors' offices and to talk to them. We are all subject to these things. So if you think, well, I'm the one who can sleep only 5 hours a night. No, you're not. And if you think you are, I would love to prove it to you. I will do a free assessment on you. So just let me know. We'll get you.
Take it at home.
You can take it at home on your computer. We'll have you do a baseline. We'll convince you to sleep. Give yourself an opportunity for 8 hours of sleep a night. And then 2 weeks later, we'll do the test again. There will be a difference. I guarantee it. So anyway, that's the big arc of treating Lyme. It's not that this is more important than that. You got to kill the bugs. That's important. But the truth is, if you shore up your physiology and you get everything humming properly, you should become like the majority of people who can fight it off on their own. Now, my journey with Lyme, I just had acute Lyme. I was running out in the local wilderness park, and it was, deer tick season, and I get a lot of wood ticks, but this was a deer tick, this particular one. And I pulled it off and threw it away and didn't think too much about it because it wasn't on there for very long. It was only on there maybe an hour. And supposedly you can't get Lyme disease if it's on there less than 28 or 48 hours, depending on who you read. And so big deal. And yet a couple weeks later, I wake up in the morning and I feel terrible. And I'm sitting there trying to put my socks on, and I realize sweat is dripping off my nose like I just finished a run or something. And I realize, oh, my joints are aching. I have a fever and chills. I have Lyme disease. And then, guess what? There was a big bullseye rash on my leg. And so I took some doxycycline right away, and poof, gone. Great. And it has never been an issue since. It turns out, if you look at the studies, women are more vulnerable to the disease than men. Why is that? We don't know. One reason, well, we just don't know. But women have very different immune systems than men because of pregnancy. If a woman aggressively fought off every single thing, they wouldn't have babies because they would fight off the fetus, right? Because the fetus is not fully them. So there's little ideas about what might make them more susceptible. And the answer isn't, oh, well, women are just more wimpy. No.
Because we all know the real answer to that.
Yeah, exactly.
A woman gets a cold or a man gets a cold.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Or, if men had babies, there would be one per village, right? Because the guys they'd get together and the guy would talk about this and he'd go, and then what happened? What? No, we're not doing that. But women, they go through that whole experience and they think, oh, let's do that again. Maybe a year later. But nonetheless. So that's not the answer. The answer isn't, well, women are just more emotional and it's an emotional disease. Nonsense. That they're just weak and, nonsense. There are physiological differences, and many diseases are this way. And, unfortunately, for way too long, it has been men that are in charge of the research, and they haven't really thought in those terms. But fortunately now there are more and more women in charge of labs instead of just working in labs, and they're starting to really suss out some of these subtleties that make that a true statement. So anyway, that's the treatment of Lyme. And the tools we use are, to get deep into you and your physiology. We use the living matrix, which is a way of gathering your history and making a timeline and creating a functional medicine matrix. And then from that functional medicine matrix, the beauty of that is it helps us make more and more holistic connections. Everything's connected, right? The knee bone is connected to the thigh bone, and the inflammation pathway is connected to the immune system pathway, and the immune system pathway is connected to the communication pathway, and so on. So it helps us make more and more holistic communication connections, and that allows us to shore up your physiology more efficiently so that you can fight things better. And then we use tests. We use this organic acid I talked about, the nutrient test. We use a very, very in-depth test for Lyme. It looks at basically every species of Borrelia that has ever been thought might cause a symptom related to or mimicking Lyme. It looks at other co-infection bacteria, so Babesia and Bartonella and Ehrlichia and blah, blah, blah. And then it also looks at things that mimic Lyme, whether it's pandas. So that's a completely different disease that people can think is Lyme, or different opportunistic viruses like Epstein-Barr, cytomegalo, or certain herpes simplex viruses, and so on, and Powassan virus, and tick-borne relapsing fever bugs, and so on and so forth. So it's a very comprehensive look at what this might be. And then, of course, all of it starts with good medicine. You come in with this laundry list of possible diagnosis from your previous doctors, and maybe that's really and truly what it is. Maybe what you really have is rheumatoid arthritis, or what you really have is fibromyalgia, or something else, MS or Parkinson's. And we got to look at that. Is that the diagnosis, or is it an odd case of that? And so often in Lyme disease, people come in and they say, well, I was diagnosed with MS. But it's an atypical case of MS. Okay, it looks like MS, it kind of smells like MS, but it's not quite MS. Let's dig deeper. Let's look for something else. And so we start looking for these other things. And sometimes we don't find anything. That's just the honest truth. Sometimes, who knows what it is. But the beauty of functional medicine is, even if we don't know what the diagnosis is, because that's just a pigeonhole to put people in, we can try to understand, okay, I don't know what the problem is, but I can look to see what's going on with your physiology. And so we can still do all those other tests, and we can find out, oh, look, you've got this issue and that issue and the other issue. Let's fix those. Let's patch those up. Bring your level of wellness high enough so that whatever it is that was ailing you, Lyme disease, rheumatoid arthritis, or the mystery disease we couldn't figure out, it just goes away. So that's the process of functional medicine. All right. Anybody have any? Good morning, Fran.
Good morning, Fran.
And I see there are several people watching, but too fearful to comment, apparently. But now's the time. If you have questions or comments, or want to ask either of us a question, now's the time. And then we are going to announce the winner of our giveaway. I want to tell you the process here. So we had an Excel spreadsheet of all the people, and there were a number of them when we pulled a number. Okay, we pulled a number, and then we looked at the writing, the emails you guys sent us. So we asked that all of you send an email. We wanted to make this semi-random because we wanted to pick somebody and then make sure they were a fit, right? If the person says, oh, I just entered because it was free stuff and I don't have Lyme disease, well, that wouldn't have been a good fit, right? So it was a random drawing, and then it just turns out that the first person we drew, we read their stuff, and it was a perfect fit. So congratulations. Go ahead. Why don't you just use the first name and the last initial, and then we'll... So we've contacted this person already, left a voicemail on their phone, but...
So, Bonita? H, or Bonnie. I know that I saw that you go by Bonnie as well.
Yep.
So
Bonita, Bonnie H. And congratulations. So I can't wait to get diving into it. It's an interesting thing, just a little interesting factoid. Part of what she wrote is, I had actually called your office about 4 or 5 years ago. I was told at that time that there was a 1.5 year waiting list. And that's true. So
That's the second. I heard that yesterday too from somebody else.
Yeah.
Actually, or Tuesday.
yeah.
But
So and so that brings us to our next topic. Congratulations to Bonnie, but we're fixing that 1.5 year waiting list, and this is how we're doing it. We're elevating the level of care. There's tons of data now that group medical visits provide a higher level of care at lower cost. A higher level of care at lower cost. Because it turns out that some of the very most powerful determinants of you getting better are social integration, social connection, belonging, camaraderie, friendship, and group medical visits can create that. And that is our
that's our time's up button.
Yeah.
I hear a little knock on the door. Online schooling right now, so.
Yeah. You want to go manage that?
Yeah, luckily I'm not wearing PJ pants today or anything, so.
Which I am.
It's true story.
Yeah.
All right.
So the banging in the background is Lincoln. He's 7 years old and in homeschooling right now. So anyway, so these group medical visits harness this, right? And we harness the wisdom and the power of the group. So what does that mean? That means that it's likely, so we've created this program with 8 people in a group. There's a whole bunch of reasons for 8. There's Lynn Taggart's book, The Power of 8, and we actually utilize her intentional healing methodologies. And I keep looking at myself over here instead of at you guys in the camera, so I apologize for that. But so we have these 8 people in a group, and it is highly probable that somebody in that group is going to think of a question that's actually critical to you that you never thought of, right? And the other thing is most people have very similar questions. So what happens is in this group, you have to be willing to share your information and be vulnerable about that. But I go person to person to person to person in these 8 people, right? And then at the end, I kind of synthesize what's the common theme. And instead of somebody saying, well, what about this? And, I answer it in 2 minutes, the 2 minutes that, I didn't have because our visit time was up in the office and now I'm overtime, and that's why I'm constantly behind because I want to answer your questions, but I answer it quickly. So instead, at the end, 15, 20 minutes to really dive in and answer a big theme question. So we get a deeper understanding of the answer, which helps you progress faster in your process. So this program, we're starting it out as an experiment. Everybody still alive?
Yes.
Good.
He was starving.
He was starving.
It was a really important interruption.
Yeah, because he never gets to eat. Anyway, so this program, we're going to do one group of 8 to start, see how it goes, and then hopefully expand. But what that allows us to do is see more people with better interactions in a more timely manner. So instead of having a year-long wait list, we'll be able to start taking people right away. So we're going to start this program in the early new year. If you're interested, contact us. You can PM us or send information at justbewell.info. What's info at info at justbewell.info. Info at justbewell.info. So that, send us an email about that. You'll also be getting everybody who joined this free giveaway. We're going to put them on the list. You'll be among the first to have the opportunity to join this group of 8. And we expect to roll this out unless there's something that happens in the groups that just we realize that all the science is wrong, which I don't think it is. I think the science is robust. I've done many, many group visits in the past. Some of you online have probably been in the group visits. I'd love it if there's anybody on the call who's been on group visits with me in the past. I'd love it if they would comment, because universally people say, well, there's a few people who are very introverted and don't want to share in a group. But by and large, even introverts like the two of us, we found that it was much more powerful to do this group thing because things like this happen. I'm really struggling with this recommendation you made. Well, I'm trying to do the same thing. Let's work together. And then those two people start calling each other, start maybe even before, COVID, getting together and doing things. And there's just real power in the social aspect. Healing used to always be a group, shamanic kind of endeavor. It was the whole village coming together for the benefit of the one. And this creates that village. So it's, I think, a beautiful program. The science tells us it's going to be huge. My personal experience with groups in the past tells me it's going to be huge. And so we're going to start it. That's how we're going to be moving forward with Lyme disease. So let's see, we got a question. Good question. I took a lot of stevia and biocidin LSF from you. No noticeable result. Not sure where to do or what to do. Right. So stevia and biocidin are two strategies to kill the Lyme bug. So so there's a whole bunch of questions here. The first question is, do you have ongoing infection? Do you have an infection that's been wiped out, but you have ongoing symptoms? And why do you have ongoing symptoms? You have, do you have the ravages of the treatment? Do you have autoimmune activation from the past infection? Do you have limbic system activation, which is continuing the alarm state that causes the majority of symptoms in Lyme disease? The bug itself doesn't cause most of the symptoms. Your body's response to the bug causes most of the symptoms. So there's a bunch of questions that have to be answered there. It may well be that you still have active ongoing infection, in which case we have not properly addressed and defeated the stealth pathology of the bacteria. So that's one big piece of the puzzle. The next, and then there's other ways to address and think about the deal. So the first thing I would do is this Vibrant Wellness Laboratory Tick-Borne Disease Panel 2.0. It's not inexpensive. It's $750, but it is the most comprehensive way to think about the whole tick-borne issue. Then we should also do probably that organic acid and nutrient test, and or do a genetic evaluation to really get underneath all that. So then there's a follow-up question: where to go? Did all the blood tests with no positive results, which did not surprise me. It may be intracellular and in my brain. Right. But we have newer, better tests. So what to do? Let's see. I'm an introvert. Christina says I'm an introvert. Kristen says I'm an introvert. The first meeting was difficult, but after that I enjoyed it. Yeah. So right, you're talking about the
Group therapy.
Group visits we did. I learned from others in the group alternative therapies others use for detoxifying and so on and so forth. Yeah. So very much so. The groups are powerful. You do have to surrender to the group. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. Being stoic and tough and like you have to be maybe with your family. Nope, there's nothing wrong with me. That doesn't work. When you're in a medical visit, it's not complaining. It's reporting your symptoms. There's a difference.
It's sharing your story.
And in every culture on earth, storytelling is part of the healing journey. It's important to tell the story, but also to be heard.
And I think also, an important part of this is that it's the same 8 people.
Yep.
So your group will always be the same. And I've been in groups like this in the past, and I found them very effective for that reason. I think 8 is a perfect number. It's enough people.
You don't get lost in the crowd.
But it's not too many that you get lost in the crowd. And, within the first couple times of meeting, because of the connection that you have from sharing, this very well could be a life debilitating illness, those connections that you form are unlike many connections in your life.
And really, how many of you unfortunately suffer at home with your family and friends really believing that it's all in your head, right?
Or they just don't know. Or perhaps, they may have compassion for
Right.
you, but you still look fine. So, you're still expected to do all your normal activities.
So this is a group of people who are experiencing the same issues, and a place where you can talk openly and honestly. Look, my wife went through cancer therapy, right? And she went to a group so that she could talk openly and honestly with other cancer therapy patients about her shithead husband who didn't get it, right? And not that I didn't love her desperately and want to help in every way I could, but I wasn't the one with cancer, right? And your husband or your wife or your friend isn't the one with Lyme disease. They will never fully understand. But the people in this group fully understand. Well, to the degree that somebody can understand another human being, they fully understand. And you will see a degree of support, not pity, support. That's the difference. Your husband and your friends, they want to support you, but often that support comes in a form of kind of pity. And that's not as helpful as support. And it's subtle. So anyway, we're very excited about this program, as you can see. As I say in a video I just recently put together, I've been doing this for 30 years. I had to find a better way because a 1.5 year waiting list is unacceptable, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and we've been hearing a lot from people too, just the cost of it. The cost of the individual visits is what holds people back.
Yeah. So the program is 1 year long, and it costs about the same as seeing me in my new cash practice, seeing me for about 4 hours. So it's 4 hours of my time in terms of cost, but it's we haven't even figured out a total number of hours, but it's 2 hours every single month, plus your hour-long intake, individual hour-long intake, and then there's other group activities that don't involve us, and there's some coaching that involves just her and not me, but I'm there for 2 hours every single month, plus your 1 hour personal, individual, not in a group intake. I must really be Narcissus or something. I keep looking at myself in the video instead of at you guys in the camera. Anyway, so it's a big program. 2 hours a month? That's 24 hours plus the hour interview or intake. That's 25 hours plus an hour of your time, 26 hours.
Plus, I'm in all those other things you
Plus,
just talked about.
Absolutely.
So those are all my hours too.
Yeah, good, very good point. So, and why is that important? It's important because she's the coach. She's going to chime in and talk about the lifestyle stuff because that's what she does. I'm going to talk about the biochemistry. And in the intake, she's there, and the scribe is there. Scribe is there every time too, so that I can just focus on you, right? And if there's an order to be, or a test to be ordered, a lab to be ordered, it comes out of my mouth. I'm not thinking about where's the keyboard. I got to order that. She's going to order it. My scribe's going to order it. Whatever. I am only thinking about you guys. So it not only is it more time, but the time is leveraged because I have help. So in every single one of those visits, there's my scribe, Elizabeth, and me. And then, if you get really stuck and you need some coaching, she knows because she's been at every single thing. So if you want to hire her to help you with coaching in addition to the program, she's up to speed now.
You
So
don't have to fill me in. And I've done the journey myself.
Yep. Oh, and which is, it's like one of my colleagues in residency said, men just can't treat women. Probably true. On some level, for women's issues, because I've never had a baby, but I've never had a heart attack either, and I've never had cancer, but I treat those things and I help people. Is it ideal? Maybe not. Maybe it'd be better to have a cancer survivor doctor for your cancer, but their journey is different from your journey, so you're never going to get the ideal match. But here we've got a variety of people. Two people with very different Lyme journeys. Mine was trivial. Hers was very significant. and somebody with 30 years of experience treating Lyme, somebody with a personal journey that's decades long treating Lyme. So there it is.
We've got you covered.
We've got you covered with the best. You know, I read this literature and I teach this stuff at the Institute for Functional Medicine. So, you know, I know Dr. Horowitz. I know he's a leading edge guy who's really into which antibiotic is the best. I know his literature upside down and backwards. I was actually given a pre-publication copy of his book to review. So it's, you know, I'm there. I got it. And then the functional medicine piece. I've been treating people with functional medicine. I'm one of the grandfathers. I'm one of the grand old doctors of functional medicine at this point. So that's where we are. That's how we do it. And I will tell you that on average, our patients are double their wellness in the first year, and they double their wellness again in the second year. Now, is that always true? No, that's on average. Some people do better than that. Unfortunately, some people are slower than that. But that's what we expect. Double your wellness in the first year, double it again in the second year. All right, I think we've killed that topic. It's now 10:48, where we normally do these for 30 minutes, so it's been a little longer. All right, I don't see any other questions. Let me just scroll here for a minute and make sure.
No, Kristen was the last question we see, so hopefully that's correct. Otherwise, we do try to go back on. So even if you're watching this after the live experience, if you have questions, go ahead and type them in the comments, send us a personal message on Messenger, and we will get back to your questions.
Yep. And now we'll take down the screen behind us, and you'll see the giant pile of junk behind there.
I don't think there's actually really much behind there.
Well, you must have cleaned it up because I made a big mess yesterday.
There's boxes. It's Christmas season, and the office is sometime the catch-all for the boxes. So there are some boxes back there.
Yep. All righty. Have a good day. We'll see you next week at this time. And
well, it's Christmas Eve.
Oh yeah, that's Christmas Eve. We're going to give you a break.
Yeah, next Thursday is Christmas Eve. So.
Yeah, we'll give you a break. We won't do that to you. But congratulations to Bonnie H. for winning the free intake.
And I'll contact you, Bonnie. I'll send you an email about kind of what is going to happen next.
Yep. And then all of you that entered will be receiving an email about this program and have the opportunity. And I'm quite certain that once we, there's anytime you start something new, there's a few kinks. And once we work out those kinks, we'll open a second and third and fourth group of 8. But we got to do it rationally so we don't make too many big mistakes too quickly.
Yeah, so it might be a little ways down the road that we...
Yeah, a month or two. Yeah. All right. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.